Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Education Magazine, where we are on the road. And as you know, I've been on the road to various places: Leeds, Birmingham, Cheltenham, London, Isle of Wight, and so on. Lots of different places, but never been to the Republic of Ireland. And why am I going to the Republic of Ireland? Well, I'm going there to meet a lovely family, Rose, who is looking after her son, Sean, who has complex disabilities. And I think at the end of the day, I'm going to have a glass of Guinness before I go home. But here we go. Let's see how I got on. I've come all the way to Ireland today to meet a wonderful family, a family that undoubtedly is in crisis. A family that perhaps epitomises a crisis that exists not only in Ireland, but across all of the United Kingdom. Meet Sean. He's a child with significant difficulties, an autistic spectrum disorder with a PDA profile. Some, of course, say that PDA does not exist, but for Rose, it really does exist. The crisis confronting this family is perhaps typical of many crises that confronts many people across England, Wales, Scotland, and indeed across the world. And the idea is to provide some kind of support for children in these difficulties. As a team, we thought carefully about whether to broadcast some of these images. But we felt that whilst we obscure the identity of the child, it was important, generally, to speak and to tell and to inform all those viewing how difficult it actually is for parents in a crisis like this. Rose, thank you so much for this interview today. I've seen some of this footage which you've shared with me, and can we just have a look at some of the footage together for a moment?
Okay.
Can you explain what's going on there? Is that a typical day?
Yeah, that would have been a very typical day. Yeah. Sean more than likely got frustrated and overwhelmed about something that we didn't know, and because he can't relate what's going on with him, because he can't explain to us, because he doesn't know. He just knows that he gets overwhelmed, and the first thing he does is scream and lash out. So that's what would happen there, yeah.
What's his diagnosis, Rose? What condition has he been diagnosed with?
He has been diagnosed with autism, ADHD. He also has a diagnosis of EDS, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is he can suffer a lot of pain and his bones click a lot.
And when did you notice that? From a very early age, you must have thought there was something that you wanted some help with. So maybe tell the audience what you think.
Okay, so Sean was born full term, great little baby. Didn't like to be held, but that was absolutely fine. Fussy over getting nappy changes, just that. But then he came to 11 months old and everything changed. No sleep, refusing food, crying, sobbing, frustrated, pitting, biting. And this went on basically for the next 1.5 years. And we couldn't put it down to the terrible twos anymore, or the terrible tantrum stage. And I actually went into my doctor for another reason. And I had Sean with me because nobody could look after him. And it was my doctor that said to me, have you thought about what's going on with Sean? And I said, I'm really concerned. To me, he's regressing, and he'd lost all the few little words he had, he'd lost them. And he explained to me about the assessments and needs process. And we started on that. And by the time Sean was 3, he had his diagnosis of autism.
When you say the assessment and needs process, this is a health assessment that's in Irish law, where you can ask the local authorities to undertake a healthcare assessment with a view to deciding whether the child's got educational needs. That's what you're talking about there.
Yeah, well, what it is obviously when he was that age, it wouldn't have even occurred to me about his educational needs. It would have been what is going on with my child, and they were in a position to tell me whether he had autism or he had something else, and that was the AON for me, the assessments of needs.
Did he start at a typical nursery school? Was that?
Well, I put him into our local nursery for 4 hours a week to try and give us a break, and it wasn't for him. They were very good with him, but he was very challenging. You know, no shoes, no socks. If they put out dried pasta like any child would, eat it, but Sean would be very angry and very frustrated. So then when it came to his preschool placement, which the government fund here, he was put into a special class in a preschool, an autism class in a preschool.
Oh, I see. And who decided, maybe no one did, but who decided what kind of strategies would be best for Sean in the classroom?
Well, the HSE and the CNO would have been the ones to say where he was going. And from there, it was down to the school of what best strategies.
Did you have a choice of which school to go to?
No, we didn't get a school for the first year, and I had to get home tuition, which meant I had to go and I'd find somebody, and the government paid them, which was horrendous. But then the second year, he did get the school. But like, as for having a choice, no. Now I would go there again. They were excellent, but no, you don't get a choice.
So legally, there's no right that you have to say, I want that school over the other school.
No, because the CNO is the person who decides what school you go for, and then the clause in it is you have to take the nearest or what they give you, or else you don't get transport. That's on you. So if I decided, oh, I don't like that school there, I don't think it's for him, I want him to go to a country school, well then, if he got into that country school, well and good, but that would be on me to make sure he gets there. He wouldn't be entitled to his transport.
Can we just look at some more of the footage?
Mm-hmm. Don't do that. I'm asking you nicely to move away from me. Please step back from the first. I'm so tired of Go and lie down. Go and have a sleep. Go and have a Right, 20 to 12. Sean's up since about 9 o'clock. And he wanted chocolate pillows. And he was told there was none in the house and he wasn't having them. And he started beating me, punching me to the face, biting me. And it's still going on. 3 hours later, it's still going on. I don't know what to do. I can't defend myself anymore. And I need some help. This isn't a case of, oh, hit him back. This isn't a case of anything like that. My 2 older sons have been asked not to intervene because I just don't want them to. Mikey got bitten so badly yesterday in his stomach. He stands behind me and just belts me into the head. I'm so sore. My body is really, really sore.
You have 5 seconds to turn the camera off.
He threatens me, threatens to kill me, threatens to me up, takes knives out.
Rose, I got to say, I find this footage very difficult to watch. My heart bleeds for you, and I'm sure there must be many people out there who can really understand the terrible ordeal that you're facing with that challenge day on day, day in, day out. Just tell us, is that a typical day?
Yeah, that would have been a typical day. We have to say in the last 4 to 5 months, things have even keeled. Medications been changed and stuff, but up until then, like, he missed almost 8 months of school last year from school refusal, no clothes, beating teachers.
He wouldn't go to school because he didn't want the clothes on his.
Yeah, he was so sensory, he could not wear clothes. He went everywhere in a big red dressing gown. And the advice I was given by the occupational therapist was to maybe make him a pair of shorts out of that red dressing gown, which wasn't.
Good heavens. So was he ever assessed by an occupational therapist?
No, he would have been to the occupational therapy for, just the check-in and the sensory integration, and then we went home and we did it all. So we were absolutely in limbo when it came to the no clothes, like stripped off, nothing. And that was for months and months and months. And we took him privately to a dermatologist, privately up to have a biopsy done, took him here, there and everywhere, all private, to find out what was going on with his skin. And it turned out we got it down to gluten. And gluten was driving his skin mad. We couldn't see it, but he could feel it. And therefore there was no clothes being worn. So there was no school. But for 4 or 5 months, we brought him to school every single day, and his teacher came out to the car every single day, and his teacher took beatings from him and horrendous behaviour from him.
The teacher took beatings?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he did.
There's a picture that we can show of a terrible bruise. Mm-hmm. Do you get these kind of beatings yourself regularly?
Oh, yes, yeah. Like, Sean is liable. He because he's so impulsive, it's so scary. There's no thought process with him. It's do and it's done. Like, we at one stage had to take every knife, scissors, everything out and hide it because he couldn't be trusted. But on that particular occasion, he had a hurl in his hand and he literally broke it over my leg.
Rose, what help is there for you? What is anybody helping you? Is there social services helping you?
After waiting so many years for respite, as what we asked for, we were finally granted last year 4 hours a week, 2 hours on a Tuesday and 2 hours on a Thursday. Unfortunately, it was at a time when Sean wasn't wearing clothes, so we weren't getting respite because we had to be in the house. They did send up a lovely lady, but she was just not suited to Sean. She had no knowledge of autism, and she would sit there, and she didn't own a TV. She was very old-fashioned, didn't agree with children watching TV and games and stuff, so they had nothing in common. And it ended up causing so much distress because on a Tuesday there'd be a huge meltdown, on a Thursday there'd be a huge meltdown, that I got in touch with the social worker and the occupational therapist to explain, this is not working. Can we go back to them and ask, is there anybody more suited to Sean? From then, I've heard nothing because whoever provided, and I don't have the name of who provided that 4 hours respite, were basically disgusted that I was turning this down. And it's not that I was turning it down, it wasn't suitable.
They were disgusted with you?
Oh yeah, disgusted with me. The social worker told me that they were disgusted with me, that I was turning it down. Like, who am I to turn down this service that's so hard got? But it wasn't a viable service for my child.
And when that person was supposed to have been helping Sean, you were facing the brunt of it after. There was an aftermath of that, was there?
There was a before-math and an aftermath, yes.
And the aftermath would be a beating?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And the swearing and the why the F does she have to come here? And all she does is makes little paper things with me, and I don't like her. And when I did try to have a wee chat with her, she basically said, well, you pander to him, and you know that's why he is the way he is. And I knew then that she didn't get my child, and that going forward I couldn't have that.
There is mention made of a condition that he is said to have, pathological demand avoidance. Before this interview, you told me what a doctor thought that was.
Yes. When I said it to my doctor, I feel that Sean may also have a profile of PDA. He kind of said, oh, what, is he into the girls? And I was like, I don't know what you mean. And he went, public displays of affection. And I went, no. I said, no, pathological demand avoidance. And I don't know if I was more shocked that he'd never heard of it and thought, well, it wouldn't be beyond the remit that Sean would be into the girls. But, you know, it definitely wasn't that. It was, yeah.
So the extent of knowledge that exists of PDA and other very well-known conditions that we talk about in education, it doesn't seem to exist much here then, does it?
Oh, God, no. When I mentioned it to Cams in the beginning that I felt he had a PDA profile, and let me just explain where this PDA profile came from. It was not me going on to Mr. Google. It was the psychologist when he was 4. We used to have a half-hour walk-in clinic every other month, and she said to me, I feel that Sean's got a PDA profile. And that's when I started Googling it and looking at it and joining forums and such. And you have to understand that was 9 years ago. And but when I did finally get him into CAMS, because that's a struggle in itself, and I did say PDA, they said to me, no, no, there's no PDA. We call it ODD. And I explained ODD is behaviour-led anxiety, and PDA is anxiety-led behaviour. And there's a huge difference, and they were not interested. They, to this day, would not accommodate that or entertain it. And then when we went through this kind of metal meeting, and Penny was supposed to assess him for PDA, and we're kind of going, look, at not that you want another name behind him or whatever, but maybe if he does, then it'll start an opening for understanding, because there is no understanding, you know. And she left. She left the services, so we never got it.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
So for Sean, I mean, watching some of the videos, he strikes me as a highly anxious young man with a lot of sensory overload issues that he's experiencing, on top of course, all the educational issues that he has. And as he's growing, he's becoming more and more, I'm sure, frustrated by the difference between how he sees himself versus how he's seeing the rest of the world. Yeah. Are you noticing that yourself?
Absolutely. He wants to go to mainstream school. I would love that for him, but that's not going to be a choice for Sean, because we know, and his teacher knows, that he would not be able to cope in a big class. So he's seeing that difference of, why can't I do what Mr. down the road does, or they can all go down the town, or they're all out doing such and such. Whereas if Sean's outside, I have to pretend, you know, that I'm doing something outside, because he's liable to go in front of a car. He's liable to say something to somebody, and we live in an estate. So there's always going to be those little things with kids, and a kid could say something to Sean, but Sean would retaliate. And then it would be me trying to take Sean away, and I'm getting beaten on the way back, you know. And so it is really difficult, but he sees himself as a lot with PDA. They see themselves on our level. It's not like the pecking order is the adult is right and you must listen to the adult. That does not work with PDA. We have to be on their level, or they're on ours. And if I say, don't do that, that gives him the right to say, how dare you speak to me like that? And that is how. So I have to be very mindful of how I speak. And we do. And that's what's kind of getting us through a day here and there. And when a day is good, we push the boundaries as much as we can. And when a day is bad, we pull it back in. And our day is spent just calming him and keeping him safe and secure.
So really, what you're saying, so I understand it,
Okay.
You have no choice about what school to go to. You're pretty much given the school.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You have no access to regular therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, that kind of thing. and you don't have access, I don't believe, to educational psychology advice. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. When he was going into transitioning from the school he's in now, primary, onto his secondary, we needed to get the educational psychologist assessment. There was no one available to do it because we were on maternity leave, so it went by what his teacher said, and the educational psychologist signed it off in order for him to get his placement in a special class in a secondary school.
So it is pretty much a paper exercise, listening to what you say rather than observing and assessing the child, him or herself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's such a shortage of people and staff, OTs, speech and language therapists. There's such a shortage that us as parents are offered courses. Like only about 6 months ago, are you coming to the sensory workshop? And I said, no, he's now nearly 13 and I've done 20 of them and I don't feel I need to do that. But I have declined a service, which looks bad for me, that I am not accepting what they're offering. But I don't need that. I've done it and things haven't changed. I will still continue with Sean's sensory diet the way I always have, and adjust it as he gets older and pull back and push forward. But there is no bringing your child in anymore and they're sitting and doing things with them. It's all the parents are doing it. Because there's such a lack of
So parents
staff.
have to educate themselves?
Yes. Well, they're educating the parents and then we have to do the work. Now,
When you say educating the parents, you mean educating the parents about what the condition is rather than how you would deal with the condition?
No, it's like if Billy is getting upset, what's the best thing to do for Billy? Is it A, B, or C? And then there might be a little group discussion, and then the leader of the group, or whoever it is, the OT at the time, would say, well, we would feel that this is what Billy needs. And Billy needs sensory integration, or Billy needs time out, or Billy needs to go to the calm down room and stuff like that.
When you say sensory integration, just because some people will obviously, that will trigger some thoughts in many people's minds about sensory integration therapy, for example, which is ordinarily going to be delivered by an occupational therapist who's sensory integration trained.
Yeah.
When you mention sensory integration, do you mean that an occupational therapist will deliver regular sensory integration therapy?
No, they will tell us what to do and we deliver it.
So they will teach you, or
They will show us a video and we take from that video. And thank God for, that we do have the internet, because a lot of us can access knowledge on that.
So parents have to be their own expert?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to tell you something about the law that exists in England and Wales, because Wales is slightly different to England. In England, when a child has special educational needs, the local authority will undertake an assessment of those needs. And they will assess the child through various different lenses. You will have a social care assessment you're supposed to have. You're supposed to have an educational assessment. You're supposed to have a healthcare assessment. And those assessments are to be looked at together, and because each need might impinge on the other. And the local authority then would draw it up, when you have this assessment, would draw up what's called an education healthcare plan. In Wales, it's gone slightly different to what it went in England. In Welsh law, the Welsh government have done away with assessments, and they've said instead, we will entrust the school to draw up an individual education plan. Mm-hmm. And that individual education plan, or if in the case of England, the education healthcare assessment, if you're unhappy with it, you can take that to a tribunal, your case, and you can say, for example, Jane needs occupational therapy, sense integration therapy every week for an hour a week. And you can ask a tribunal to say, put that in. And if that's put into the plan, the same as when it would be in Wales, the local authority is obliged by law to ensure that that's delivered. Yes. That does not exist at all in any form in Ireland.
No, we do have an IEP, an individual educational plan. And we're brought in at the beginning of the year to talk about, and we fill in a form to say what our child's strengths and weaknesses are and what our concerns are. And then that is put into an IEP for them.
But the IEP is drawn up by a school teacher.
Yes, it is. There is no other professional involved. It's the school teacher.
So you don't get the comprehensive assessment from different experts talking, for example, about the strategies that are needed, like sense integration therapy, speech and language therapy. Does Sean clearly, from looking at the videos, there's no doubt in my mind, in all the years that I've practiced in this particular area, no doubt in my mind that he needs regular occupational therapy and he needs regular speech and language therapy. For example, there's no doubt in my mind that he needs a small, very, very small class. And I would also go as far as to say there's no doubt in my mind that he would not cope in a mainstream environment. It would be dangerous for him, dangerous for others. You've mentioned some of those episodes, and we've seen some of those episodes. But if the local authority were adamant you're not going to have any of those things, there's no means for you to challenge.
No. The local authority just don't have the bodies. They don't have anybody to do it.
I'm surprised to learn that in 2004, I've read that the Irish government passed law called the Education for Persons with Special Educational Needs Act 2004, which was supposed to enable the drawing up of an education plan following an assessment that if you're ultimately then not happy with, you could take to a tribunal or an appeal to some tribunal body to challenge the contents of that plan. Are you surprised that since 2004, I've read that the Irish government have not actually implemented that?
I'd like to say I'm surprised, but no, I'm not surprised. Because I feel that our country is very, very backwards. And we've got a lot of catching up to do on other countries than, regards to the educational needs and the emotional and physical needs of all people, but especially those that are additional needs.
You mentioned to me before this interview of a terrible crisis that you confronted with Sean one day. Mm-hmm. And he was hammering you, I think was the expression you were giving me. Battering you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you called for help. Could you tell the audience what happened?
Okay, so there was a couple of incidences, but on this one incident, Sean was having one of his really, really bad days, and at the same time the phone rang and it was an occupational therapist. And if you get anything from this conversation, that's gold dust. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you answer that or you don't get it again. And I answered it, and as I was talking on the phone, I was literally getting battered, and I said to her, I don't know what to do here.
When you say you were getting battered, was he punching you?
Oh, punching, kicking, biting, using whatever weapons he could get his hands on. And I am on the phone and I'm doing this and I'm saying to her, right now I am getting beaten so bad. And I was asked, oh, have you hit him? And I said, no, I have not. And she said, I am going to get in touch with TUSLA and they're going to advise further.
TUSLA is the social services, is that right?
Yes. And some hours later, I received a voice call from TUSLA to tell me that they were out of hours, but if things didn't improve, I had to ring the guards. And that's what I did. I rang the guards. The guards have been up a few times.
And the guards, of course, are the police.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. The guards are the police. Yeah. They've come up a few times.
So the advice for you to handle a child who was having a meltdown and who was hammering you was not to give you any particular help or strategies or support, respite, but to invite you to call the police on your son.
Yes. And I had to do that. I had to do that several times. I had to do it when he broke the window. I had to do it when he was beating me so bad. I had to do it because I had nothing and nobody else. And if I even turned around to defend myself, I could hurt him and he'd be taken away from me. So I had no choice. I had to ring the police.
And what happened when the police...
Well, so the police have no knowledge. They have no training in autism. You're explaining to them what's going on. They certainly don't know about PDA, and they're going up and they're having a little chat, and then they're coming back down and saying, now we've had a little chat with him, and Mammy, I think he might be sorry for that. And I would say to them, can you please make a referral to TUSLA? Because I really need a TUSLA to get involved, because they can be beneficial if you have them. They can be beneficial. They're not just there to go and take your children away. And they made 2 to 3 referrals to TUSLA. And from that, I was offered the NVR program, which was Non-Violent Restraint Program, which I very sillily thought that I was going to be taught how to physically defend myself without ever hurting my child. But that's not what it was. It was basically about putting out the fire before it starts, or how to deal with this when they're demanding, and how to understand how they're feeling, and obviously where they're coming from. And although the people that delivered it were very nice, that was not what I was looking for, and that's not what I needed.
Rose, I'm thinking that people will watch this interview, and they will, I'm sure, be surprised that a decent mother like you, who've turned to people for help, has had doors shut on them. And I'm sure they'll also be surprised to learn that if you want to challenge the state and its view on how to meet your son's needs, that you have no means to do so. That there is no mechanism, even though the law was passed in 2004 by the Irish Republic's Parliament. They still have not implemented. Over 20 years have gone by, and it's still not been passed. And I think people will be surprised and probably shocked that the Irish people are not really getting an effective remedy to resolve their valid disputes against government when they're not managing the needs of children with special disabilities like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Could you sort of epitomise what life is like for you? I appreciate it's difficult. We've seen the videos, but perhaps could you explain how do you feel at the moment?
Okay. Well, right now I'm a little bit distressed. It's horrible to watch videos of your child, what they're able to do, what they're capable of, not what they're able to do, but what they can't help but do. And just to know that any footage that was taken of my child was to prove to CAMHS that this was the situation that we were in. They don't accept your word. They want proof. So basically, you go in and you wake Sean up, and you know from the moment he opens his eyes what kind of a day it's going to be. And it's not a case of where you will turn around to your average child and say, come on, up out of the bed, time to do this, time to do that. They're all demands. So we have to be so careful of how we speak to him. The whole family have to be careful of how we speak to him. And it would be, do you think you'd like some breakfast? That's his choice. We hope he says yes, but that's his choice. We're not going to make him. And it continues on from there. If something has happened in school the day before, which often happens, it could be in a little altercation with a child, or an SNA might have said something to him, then he's had a bad night. He relives that, he's fallen asleep, he's waking up, he's talking about it, and very difficult to get him into school then. But then you get him into school, you're waiting for that phone call. You don't just tune out and go, oh, I've 6 hours of bliss. You are waiting. You're sitting outside waiting for him to come out. And when you see his teacher come out, your heart just sinks, because something's been said, something's been done. And by God, if something has happened in school, I don't feel safe driving home with him, because he lashes, and he wouldn't think of safety. He's just, our main concern for Sean is he's impulsive, and he will just hell for leather, go for it. It'll be, he did effing this and she effing did that, and then it'll be, you're not effing listening to me, and I'm saying, honey, I'm driving the car and I'll have to pull in the car, and then we'll go home, and I'm trying to get him in before he's out on the street screaming for all the neighbours to hear. And then I'm blessed with my 2 neighbours. They just tune out, but we close the windows because we probably have a bad evening of it.
And this is day in, day out?
This is day in, day out. As I said in the beginning, we've had these last few months, the medication has been upped, and he seems to be on more of an even keel, and all the pressure's been taken off him in school. He's never had homework. He doesn't bring home homework because that's too much pressure. So we're just like getting comfortable these last few months, and just terrified for the transition into secondary school because it's a big, huge change again.
And you haven't got a choice about secondary school?
No, I was told to apply for absolutely every school because there's such a demand in little places, but he managed to get into a secondary school with a special class that his older brother had went into, because it will go by your siblings, who family members that's been in that school beforehand and stuff like that. So he did manage to get that placement, and I had applied for 6, and the other placement was in Kilcormac, which would have been probably 40-minute drive each way for me. But if I wanted him to go to Kilcormac, which would have been a smaller school, because I am very concerned about a town school, because of the way he is, and then the government would not have supported my decision, as in transport, and I would have to drive over and back and over and back, and that in itself would have been
But what about a special school, a small, very small environments, very small classes, where all the children there are having strategies that in an autism-friendly way?
Right. Well, we have one special school in Tullamore. It's actually called the Offaly Special School, and that is for children who are severe, mostly non-verbal. And then we have the autism classes within mainstream school. That's where all our children go.
And how often do they integrate with the mainstream peers?
Right. Okay. So on the yard, which is hell on earth, they integrate. They are sent down to mainstream for as much as they're able for. So Sean would only go down to mainstream for art and PE, and that's when he would mix.
But at break times?
At break times, they're all out in the yard together. The smaller ones are in a sensory garden, but once you come to a certain age, you're all out in the yard together.
Rose, this account shocks me. It really does. There is no way in a million years that I would want to see Sean in a mainstream environment with mainstream peers. I've done this job long enough to now tell you that I've witnessed and experienced horror stories. And I hope that there will be a level of protection, a substantial level of protection that will be put in place for him when he's in the mainstream class and in the mainstream yards. Is he going to have a learning support assistant with him?
Well, he will be in a class with 5 other students, and there will be a teacher and 2 SNAs in there.
And will they follow him into the yard?
Probably not. And in all fairness, he wouldn't want them to. He's nearly 13. But no, they wouldn't follow him into the yard. But they would be at a distance. By being at a distance, they can see the rough and tumble, but they don't know what's been said to cause that. And when you have a child saying, he said this and she said that, they're both, get into trouble. And that's where the trouble arises from, because there's nobody understanding the underlying, I went to school, Mike, you went to school. We've all been divils, and somebody can turn around and say something to you, and you can be quite clever and not get caught in what you're saying. Sean Bracken will never be clever and not get caught. He will always be the one to get caught because it's from the mouth out, because he's impulsive. He shouts louder than everybody else, so he always looks like the bad guy, unfortunately. And he doesn't have the social communication to know how to deal with situations, whether it's just a joke, whether it was just a bit of banter. He doesn't get that at all. And then for a teacher, an SNA, to say, he was only joking, he doesn't get that. And that's when all the arguments from school arise, come home, and we're trying to deal with it at home, and we're trying to explain.
Has Sean experienced bullying?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And has he been accused of being a bully himself?
No. Thank God, no. He hasn't. but he did very badly for 2 years in his school, in his class, in his special needs class.
Rose, your account is an epitome of many other people's accounts. I'm sure you would say that, in terms of parents who are friends of yours, say, with similar circumstances. Are they all experiencing the same thing?
My friend circle is small. It's mostly an autism community friend circle, and Sean is the only one out of all our children that has these behaviours. So as much as they sympathise, they don't live it. They don't know. Like, we don't go places, we don't go to restaurants, we don't meet up at the park, stuff like that. Everything has to be on Sean.
When do you get a break?
Gosh, now he's in school. I'm talking to you.
So every day, every weekend, is all the life revolves around Sean?
Oh, 1,000,000,000%. We wouldn't know life any other way. It is.
Are you? Excuse me for asking, but do you feel well yourself?
Do I feel well?
Yeah.
Well, I'm on medication. I am on medication for anxiety. And that would have been quite recent. Well, not quite recent, a couple of years now, when lockdown really, really, really took its toll on our whole family.
So we're dealing then with parents of children in Ireland with special educational needs, have to educate themselves.
Yep.
They have to fight and live in fear that they will be accused of harming their own child if they are seen to be asking for help. And they have no means of redress through the system to get the right help. And there's no availability of suitable schools other than for the most extreme disabled young people.
Yes.
So if we're looking at a school, let's say, for a cognitively capable child who would be suited for mainstream, but who could not cope in mainstream because they are maybe too anxious, maybe they won't learn that way because they need a much smaller class, that doesn't exist.
Where we are now, as I said, like, there's a mainstream school with probably 600 students, and there's 3 AST classes in that, and therefore my child and the others. And as for like being so well able academically, Sean is well able academically, but would not cope in the mainstream setting. So he has to do all his learning down in the autism class.
And Rose, there's no help also other than maybe a 2-hour respite. There's no other help. Are you able to ask for the social services to provide you with weekend breaks or holidays? I can see you smiling. Can I tell you why? Can I tell you why I asked that question? Because in England, you may be surprised to learn this, but in England and Wales, the social services, the package that they should be providing for people with the extreme difficulties that you're experiencing, include breaks, holidays, respite breaks, weekend breaks. That doesn't exist here.
Oh, it does. We did have a place called Charleville Cottage that my oldest Mikey would have went to, because my oldest son Mikey's special needs, and he would have went to. And then they closed it literally to the public for one child, and it only opened back up to the public about 2 years ago, when this said child was sent to England, to an institution in England. Nobody could use the cottage, it's called, and we would be way down on the pecking list. Like, we wouldn't even be considered for that.
Wow.
Not at all.
Rose, I've got to say thank you so much for participating in this interview. I watched the footage and my heart broke. I'm being honest with you. It really did. And I struggled with the idea of whether or not even to show the footage. But I felt that it was part of the greater good to expose the enormous difficulties that parents like you go through. And I my heart goes out to you, and I hope that the law in Ireland will change in time. And I just live in hope that you will get the support and the peace that you need and deserve. But thank you so much for participating today. And my message to the Irish government and to the public in Ireland is that the time has come whereby you must now recognise that as long ago as 2004, you passed legislation to help people like Rose. But yet you have failed to implement that legislation in a way that I regard as a breathtaking demonstration of a failure to meet your basic duties. The executive, that is the government, should never defy the will of Parliament. Your Parliament has spoken. It has said what it wants. It is told, and it is mentioned to the Irish people, that we will support children with disabilities because we subscribe to fully the European Convention on Human Rights, and we support the rights for children to have liberty and protection and care. You are failing to do it. And in my opinion, this should spearhead, I hope, a claim against the Irish government to bring forward legislation that you committed to, rather than to leave people like Rose and all the other parents around Ireland without the proper help that they deserve. I applaud Rose, and I applaud everything that she has done. And I thank her and her whole family for being brave enough to explain the problem that she is confronting and to hopefully relay a message to the Irish government that really enough must be enough. These are people who need help. These are people that require support. And these are people who require the state to protect them. Because in my view, a nation can be judged by the way that it treats its children. Well, there you have it. There's my little trip to Ireland and my little insight into what's going on there, and my view, broadly, it's a broad view, yes, about what I think the law is like there versus the law, what it's like here. I hope you enjoyed the visit. I hope you can join me at the next episode. So look forward to seeing you then, and have a good one.